Hello, Professor Bryant. I picked questions 2 and 3 for this assignment. So for question number 2, an important friendship in my life right now is with my friend Daisha. I met her 3 years ago when I was looking for a new place to live and she needed a roommate. When we first met, we both had very positive schematas that guided our interactions because we both have had great experiences in our past with roommates that we lived with. We met once as a formality to see how compatible we were, but I knew that I could get along with anyone as long as they were laid back, friendly, and genuine people. One of the first things that we did do is when we met up, we discussed our daily routines, our work schedules, and habits to see if we had enough similarities to make living together work out. Now, when we met, I discovered that she worked in the restaurant industry like me, and I was able to immediately feel comfortable and connected with her because of our service industry schematic background. Since I met Daisha, we have become more than roommates, and she is one of my closest friends. I unfortunately had to move out of our apartment about a year ago, but we still continue some of the same routines just over the phone. One of them is checking in with each other after work. When we used to live together, we would hang out before bed and catch up with each other about our day. So after I moved out, I started calling her on the phone on my drive home, and we would chat and just de-stress about everything and the events that irritated us, or just kind of reconnected about that. This routine has been something we have been doing for about a year now, and it has helped keep our friendship really strong because we are constantly updating each other on the current changes in our life and just, the same mindsets, things like that. We also have a holiday ritual we started about 2 years ago, and that is going to the Princess Hotel for Christmas, and it is something we both look forward to every year. Now, I would say that the rules and norms of our relationship have changed over the years because our relationship grew from a necessity as roommates and turned into a genuine friendship with each other. We have supported each other through many life changes, such as new jobs, moving, family issues, relationships, just a lot of growth that happened between us. Originally, I would say the rules and norms for us as roommates consisted of typical things like being considerate of each other's sleep schedules, maybe notifying each other when we were having people over, and things like keeping the places clean, the common areas, and then who cleans the bathrooms and kitchens. Now, since I've moved out, the rules and norms have changed and are more or less obvious, not as obvious, but the main values still hold true. We have just tailored it to our friendship in a different way. For example, we are still considerate of each other because, we are currently both in relationships, and it is understood between us that if we are spending time with our significant other, we're not really available to hang out or chat on our phone unless it's an emergency. So this rule that we have between us is an example of how we have boundaries in our friendships, so one person won't feel rejected or brushed off when another person is unavailable to hang out or pick up the phone. And for question number 3, I would say, out of the 5 conflict management strategies, I believe I utilize avoidance the most, but it is only because I'm trying to give myself time to assess what is happening. I do like to observe when situations become tense and take the time to organize my thoughts about the conflict by considering my part in it is whether I'm overreacting and whether there is a solution, how am I going to achieve it, and just kind of play it out beforehand of it happening. And if I do not believe a solution can be achieved by, directly confronting the problem, I am typically the type to maneuver my way around the person and kind of avoid it until enough time has passed and either the issue goes away or else, something has to be done about it. And that is why I would say my conflict management tactic leans more towards avoidance. However, I know that I'm not afraid to speak my mind or say something when I feel that it is the only option, or when, I don't have a way of avoiding the problem from getting worse. I'm not the type to be passive aggressive. So in that sense, I guess I'm not really the avoidance type. I will handle it when it gets to that point. But prior to that, I tend to just step back and let things kind of play out unless there is a solution I can find right away. I used to be more aggressive and combative when I handled problems, and that was how I used to handle them. But I have learned that when I approached conflict that way, I ended up losing friendships, or I oftentimes really regretted the things that I said because I couldn't take them back. I now realize that I was behaving in that way because I didn't take the time to think through things, or I either felt cornered and that was why I lashed out at people. So after realizing that, I am now working on being more cautious about how I approach conversations with other people, because it's not just me and my opinion that matters. I realize that there is two parts to it, and it all ties into, conflict and how do we resolve it. So I feel that when it comes to personalities and conflict resolution techniques, it is not specifically personality traits that predisposes a person to choose one style over another. Instead, I think that it might have more to do with the parenting style that they grew up with. Why I say this is because, for example, when I grew up, I know that my parents were very authoritarian in the way that they raised me, and I did not get an input when I disagreed with something. So in this way, the way I was raised is they raised me to avoid confronting them when I disagreed with their rules, and so I either had to find a way around it, or when it came back to a point, I aggressively pushed back when I could not voice my feelings about the rules that they said. I also remember having friends who had parents who set boundaries by either compromising or collaborating with their kids. And I do remember those kids that I, grew up with, when they were raised like that, were much more open to discussing their feelings and conflict and confronting it in the same manner that they were raised. So in my opinion, in the end, it's not really personality specifically that predisposes a person or an individual to handle conflict a certain way, but instead I think it's the environment that they were raised in as kids, and how they were taught and learned from the parents and how that is the appropriate way to handle conflict.